Right, so massive news basically came out right as I was making my video yesterday, so I didn't do it yesterday, but I'm going to do it today. And that the Trudeau blackface, brownface, whatever you want to call it, and obviously it happened more than once. It actually happened 3 times. I believe once was in high school, once was when he was a teacher, and then one, I forget when the other one was. But this is a massive story for a few reasons. Number one, it exposes the hypocrisy of the left in that they have been talking for months on end. I mean, in Canada, I mean, the US too, but about how they're trying to desperately link anyone on the right, whether it's anyone in the PPC or the Conservatives, to being racist, and to not really much avail whatsoever. They haven't really came up with anything even close to something like this. And something like this comes out, and where are they all acknowledging their hypocrisy, their guilt, their wrongdoing? It's the quick little apology, BS non-apology, basically. They apologize, but you can tell you don't really mean it, and then they want to move on as quickly as possible to something else. And that if you're on the left, let's say you're a Trudeau supporter, like what more could it take for you not to vote for him? Like I really don't understand. Like obviously, like if he was convicted of a crime, that's like basically if it was made so you physically can't vote for him. Like honestly, that's the only thing that it would take for some of these people. In that if you were, let's just say this happened to Andrew Scheer, and you ask these people on the left, what are your main reasons not to vote for Andrew Scheer? I guarantee you that the majority of people would cite the blackface or the brownface thing. I guarantee it. And the thing about the left is that a very small percentage of people are going to change their minds about whether or not to vote for Trudeau. I mean, hell, you don't have to vote Conservative. Vote PPC as an FU to the Conservatives and the Liberals. Don't vote Green, because the Greens are the same as the Liberals. The NDP are in shambles. They probably don't even have a candidate for your riding. I mean, just don't vote. I mean, not a low voter turnout signals to governments that people are dissatisfied with the current choices available, especially if you're on the left. The choices are either the Liberals, which are horrible, or the NDP, which are equally as bad. So if you're on the left, I mean, don't vote. Like, I don't care if you don't want to vote Conservative or PPC. But like I said, the left is so hypocritical, and that the thing about the left that the right doesn't, people on the right don't really understand, is that it boggles people's minds on the right that they can have such a double standard on the left. But when you believe in leftist politics, you believe that having different sets of rules for different people not only is okay, but it's a good thing, because they view it as benefiting themselves. When you're on the left, the majority of people that are on the left are voting left because they want free stuff, basically. There is the union members and stuff like that they're making decent money to very good money sometimes that vote left, but the majority of people on the left are, low class, that having higher taxes, having higher corporate taxes, all that kind of stuff benefits them. And the problem with that is that to do that kind of thing, you have to think that it's greedy and terrible that someone making, $100,000 to $200,000 a year, which almost everybody knows, at least a handful of people that make that kind of money if you have a decent amount of family and friends. Unless you grew up in a really poor family. Everybody knows those kind of people. So they need to be dehumanized because, like I said, the left, they want you to believe that somehow it's a morally okay thing to say that someone who's making $100,000, $200,000 a year, they're not rich by any means. They're getting along, just fine. I mean, unless they're spending way more than they have, but that's another story. They want you to think that it's okay to say that, oh, well, that person, it's okay for me to take more of that person's money for me, but it's greedy for them to want to keep more of their money for themselves, even though they're already paying, double as much as someone who's in the bottom tax bracket, maybe even more, to be honest. But it's perfectly moral for me to want to take more than I'm already taking from them, and that's kind of the double standard on the left, like I said. And it's really brainwashed into people, and it's pumped into people, and very few people you hear think that that's not okay. And the reason why it's not okay is because if you want to have, you can't have a ethical or philosophical moral system that has different sets of rules for different people. If you're going to have it, you're just opening the door for corruption, because everybody's going to think that they don't need to follow the rules because they're different rules for different people. And the problem is, on the right, you have too many people that refuse to do it, or refuse to do it in the same way. A lot of the reasons, because a lot of the people on the right are Christians who have, a much better philosophical, moral, ethical system than atheists, who tend to be people on the left. And atheism really has no moral or ethical system. Like, it doesn't exist. I mean, some people have it, but it doesn't exist. If atheists had a moral and ethical system, they would point out the fact that the state contradicts itself. I mean, they love to point out how Christian, religion contradicts itself, but they'll never point out that the exact same thing happens with the state. So that's a different story in all and of itself. But this is very big news because, like I said, the polls show the election's pretty tight. I've seen polls that have slight victories for both sides, so I'm just going to assume that it's very tight. And like I said, the reason why it's very tight, definitely part of the reason, is that the Conservatives are very milquetoast, and their strategy tends to be, let's try and convert as many people from the left as we can. And I don't think that's going to work, because the problem with the left is that you see this in the U.S. A lot of Democrats, or former Democrats, are voted for Trump, and that's because the left has gone so far to the left. So if they just stayed where they were, they would keep a lot of the people. I mean, the PPC, I'd say, is split between people who haven't voted in a long time that wanted a more libertarian or nationalist party, and between people who have recognized that the Conservatives now are way too far to the left. I'd say the PPC is pretty split between that. And if the Conservatives actually held their values, traditional, they would have kept those former Conservative voters, and they might even have gained some people who haven't voted in the past, because if you haven't voted in the past, like, the clock is ticking on this kind of stuff, because if Canada keeps immigration at the levels that it is right now, elections are going to come down to the far left and the left. And by that, I don't mean people, when they hear the left, they think of it as rather moderate nowadays. It's really not. The far left is going to become the new left. Maybe not super far left, but pretty far left, especially compared to 5 or 10 years ago. Elections are basically going to come down to, far left, full-on socialism, borderline communism, against people that want, like, watered-down socialism, basically. So, like I said, getting Trudeau out of office is an absolute imperative in the Canadian elections coming up. And that doesn't mean you have to vote Conservative. You can vote PPC, because if PPC can get to some seats, maybe they can band together with the Conservatives to vote the Liberals and the NDP and all these kind of people down. I do think that the Conservatives have gotten slightly better from what I've seen lately, but they're definitely still not close enough for me to want to vote for them. So this is a very huge story. Basically, just in conclusion, that the basic takeaway from this is that if you're on the left and you're still voting Trudeau, you have absolutely no moral or ethical system whatsoever, and don't pretend you do. I mean, you're pretending before anyways, but because, like I said, if this happened to Scheer, I guarantee you I would bet every possession in dollar I have that he would lose the election because of this, and possibly even not even make it to the election, be forced to step down or resign or whatever. But at the very least, he would lose, because the polls are close. If this happened to them, there would be a good 5 to 10 point swing. The Liberals would win. They'd probably win another majority. So I'll leave it there. I mean, I think I've kind of made the point clear. I mean, there's a lot of other videos on this topic. Stefan Molyneux just came out with a new video on it. I'd go check that out. It's a great video. I just watched it. So stay tuned for more videos, because the Canadian elections is really heating up. I thought it was just heating up going into yesterday and this week, but since this came out, it's heated up a lot more. And the other problem, too, is that the mainstream media is kind of running cover for Trudeau. I mean, I was watching a bit of Global, little CBC today. Not intentionally, it was just on at work. So do not watch the TV. I mean, if it's on, the rule of thumb is that if it's on the TV, it's biased. Even if it's like Fox in the U.S. is decent at times, but still is overwhelmingly biased. So if it's on the TV, do not watch it. Find a good independent media outlet to watch and go from there. So if you liked the video, make sure to hit that like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more.